conditioned to believe that to win, we must be a fortress, shut the world out, kill our feelings, and outcalculate our opponent. In our last video, we performed an autopsy on that stoic robot and saw exactly why that mechanical ideal turns us into soulless, lifeless, and most importantly, suboptimal machines. But if we aren't robots, then what are we? The industry sees the player as an isolated unit sitting in a vacuum. That is the skin-tight lie. If a device in our pocket can sync with a satellite 20,000 miles away, why would we assume that our brain, the most complex processor in existence, is a closed circuit? Today, we're going to look at the hardware that the GTO-obsessed industry usually ignores. We're diving into the bio network. That's the physics of how our brains and hearts act as high-frequency transmitters and how the space between us at the table is actually a shared information field. There's a high-speed, wireless data stream broadcasting from every seat at our table. It's a vibrational resonance the robot was to insulate it to feel. We're not missing the signal because it isn't there. We're missing the signal because we've been playing with our antenna snapped off. Our mind doesn't end at the skin. If we're only playing the cards we can see, we're missing the most important information in the room. Let's start with a hard truth. We are transmitters. Research by the HeartMath Institute has shown that the heart's electromagnetic field is the most powerful in the body. It's up to 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. And it isn't contained in our chest. It extends several feet in every direction. That means that at the poker table, it's literally overlapping with the persons to the left and to the right. The idea that we are isolated, skin-tight units is a failure of observation. It assumes that human presence ends where air meets the body. We think we're holding it in, but our nervous systems are broadcasting our internal state to the entire table at the speed of light. In 1665, the physicist Christian Huygens discovered the principle of biological entrainment. He noticed that two pendulum clocks on the same wall would eventually swing in perfect unison. They weren't talking, but the micro vibrations through the wood forced them into a shared frequency. At the table, we are the clock. Our opponents are the clock. If we insist on being skin tight, we are fighting the synchronization. But if we are integrated, we can notice when our opponent's pendulum shifts. We can feel their heart rate spike in our chest. We aren't reading their mind, we are synchronized to their nervous system. The hunch is just our body reporting a change in the shared frequency. Think of this as the high-frequency trade. If the person standing next to us is in a state of high coherence, meaning their heart rhythm is stable and their focus is clear, they're broadcasting an orderly frequency. If our frequency matches theirs, the waves align. This is called constructive interference. The signal is amplified. In other words, in other realms, we also call it chemistry. Physically, our two systems are boosting each other's signal. But then there is destructive interference. When the person standing next to us is in a state of chaos, internal panic, deep deception, or intense aggression, their field becomes jagged and incoherent. When their waves hit our orderly field, the waves clash. They cancel each other out, and they create friction. That's not a thought we have in our head. That's an actual physical event happening in the space between our bodies. And our nervous systems detect that friction as a disturbance. This disturbance is the hidden cost of the stoic bypass that we discussed in the last video. When we are in destructive interference with a table, Our brain performs an active filtration process that consumes massive amounts of metabolic RAM. That explains why we can feel exhausted after a session where nothing big happened, because we were spending cognitive load on processing jagged channels of static on top of playing cards. The robot burns out because maintaining a skin tight seal against the universal law of resonance is an unsustainable energy drain. Attempting to seal out the chaos only serves to starve our parallel processor of the raw data required for pattern matching. If we block the noise, we lose the map, leaving our intuition with no information to process. To understand how we receive this data, think of a tuning fork. When we strike one fork and place it next to one of the same frequency, the second one will begin to vibrate without ever being touched. We are biological tuning forks. Most believe we are thinking our way through a room, but in reality, our hardware is vibrating in response to the frequencies around us. If we sit in a room full of fear, our fork begins to vibrate with fear. If we sit in a room of high intensity focus, our system tries to sync with that focus. The skin tight lie tells us we are immune to the people around us as long as we keep our poker face. But our face is completely irrelevant to the broadcast. While we're busy controlling our facial muscles, our heart is broadcasting our internal reality at 5,000 times the magnetic strength of the brain's. But if this broadcast is constant, why does the skin tight lie feel so convincing? Why don't we feel like we're constantly plugged in? The reason the robot fails is a math problem. As a neurobiologist Manfred Zimmermann famously quantified, the conscious, analytical mind can only process around 40 to 50 bits of information per second. That's our solver brain. It's slow, it's linear, and it gets overwhelmed. But our sensory system, our bio network, is processing 11 million bits of information per second. Shutting out our feelings and our intuition jams our internal receiver. In the last video, we spoke about the negative effect on our processing capacity. But we're also blocking out the information our opponents are involuntarily sending us, which is extremely low-hanging fruit of competitive advantage for us. To prevent total system overload, the brain functions as a high-pass filter. It aggressively deletes 99.9% of incoming reality. It filters out the sound of our own heartbeat and the constant hum of the environment. Most importantly, though, it filters out the subtle pings of the bio network. We have been conditioned to prioritize the 50 bits of logical, tangible data. But in doing so, we've been tuning out the most expansive data stream in the room. The hunch isn't a guess. It's our subconscious mind. And it's 200,000 times faster than our conscious mind, delivering a finished calculation to our gut long before our logic brain realizes that the hand has even started. Just because our conscious mind isn't actively thinking about the broadcast doesn't mean our system isn't receiving it. It is the subconscious mind that quietly processes those 11 million bits. It is constantly monitoring the wireless data of the people around us, the subtle modulations of their heart rate broadcast, and the interference patterns created when their field meets ours. When we experience a hunch, we are experiencing what psychologist Timothy Wilson calls the adaptive unconscious. The subconscious sends a signal to the 50-bit processor in the form of a physical sensation, a chill, a tightness, or a ping of certainty. The robot dismisses these signals as noise because they can't be traced back to a logical source. But they aren't noise. They are the results of a high-speed data audit. To an unintegrated mind, this may feel like magic. To an integrated mind, this is simply the most efficient form of data acquisition available to our species. Now take everything we've established and place it in the most pressurized environment imaginable. a high stakes arena. In most daily interactions, this broadcast is background noise. But a poker table is different. It is a closed system in which 9 people or less are hyper focused on the exact same variables for hours on end. This is what creates the pressure cooker effect. We've all felt that specific density in the air during a final table bubble, where the broadcast of a short stack isn't just a tell, it's a physical weight we have to navigate. When a human being is under intense stress, facing a decision that carries massive consequences, their broadcast is no longer a whisper, it becomes a shout. Their heart rate variability doesn't just shift, it spikes or collapses into a rigid, rhythmic pattern of fear. The robot thinks it's safe behind a pair of sunglasses and a hoodie. It thinks that by controlling its breath and sitting still, it has achieved silence. But we can't hoodie our way out of a toroidal field. At the table, we aren't just looking for physical tells, we are sensing modulations in the field. Wait. When an opponent is weighted with a monster hand, the air around them feels dense. Their broadcast is coherent, grounded, and heavy. Static. When an opponent is running a skin tight lie of their own, a massive bluff, their field is jagged, thin, and vibrating with a high frequency static. The professional who relies only on GTO and ranges is essentially playing a game of battleship in the dark. They're guessing coordinates based on past data. The integrated player plays in the light. By quieting our internal noise, the ego, the fear of losing, the frustration of the downswing, we lower our noise floor. We become a high fidelity receiver. When we feel that a call is correct, despite the math being marginal, it isn't a gamble. It's our system responding to the opponent's interference of running a bluff. With our antenna, we have caught their static in the broadcast long before they even put a chip in the pot. This is where we must distinguish between paranoia and reception. Paranoia is an internal loop. It is our own 50-bit brain projecting our fears onto the opponent. Reception, however, requires lowering the noise floor. When we talk about lowering the noise floor, we're talking about the somatic silence of an integrated player. When we are vibrating with the fear of losing our stack, our own static is so loud that we cannot possibly detect the static of an opponent's bluff. We have to become the steady clock on the wall so that we can feel the other clocks trying to find their rhythm. This is why our previous focus on fun as a high performance requirement, affect labeling, wu-wei, and non-contention were not just mindfulness fluff. It was a technical preparation for the bio network. We have to clear our internal cache to have bandwidth for the 11 million bits of incoming data. In this state, we aren't reading people. We are noticing where the field's being distorted. We are looking for a thermal signature of a hand. A monster hand doesn't just look strong, it feels thermodynamically stable. A bluff doesn't just look weak, it feels like a system in the middle of a meltdown. When we acknowledge that our skin isn't a boundary, but a bridge, the game stops being a battle of only wits and starts being a study of resonance. We aren't here to burn the math books. The mistake isn't using the 50 bits of logical data. The mistake is letting them run the entire show. When we bridge the gap between GTO and the bio network, we aren't guessing, we're verifying. We use the math to build the map, but we use our biology to navigate the terrain in real time. This is the state of integration. It's where our intellect and our intuition finally stop fighting and become a symbiotic connection. When the math says fold, but the field says friction, the integrated player has the courage to believe the hardware that's been evolving for millions of years. The robot ideal was a safety blanket. It was a way to feel in control in a game defined by uncertainty. But that control is an illusion. bought at the cost of our most valuable data stream. We're not isolated machines. We're high frequency transmitters in a shared information field. And we don't have to be fortresses. All we have to be is high fidelity sensors. When we snap the antenna back on, the game stops being a math problem we have to solve, and it starts being a broadcast we can simply listen to. We reclaim the energy we used to spend on stiffness and pour it back into presence. This is where the joy is. This is where the power is. Stop trying to be a machine and start being a network. The mind doesn't end at the skin, and the game doesn't end at the cards. The skin tight lie is hereby debunked, and it's time we started playing like it.